Hi friends, my name's Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. Welcome back and welcome to another video. This one coming to you from a little bit of a different setting. You know, can't get to the movies at the moment. There's not really much out in terms of horror or thriller, so we moved to the other side of the room. I thought we'd switch it up a little bit today and would take some chances. I just did a video on really disturbing horror, and talking about that does not scare me, but talking about this kind of stuff actually does. So this is all in fun, obviously my own opinion. Obviously you can see the title. Today we're going to talk about remakes, and we're actually going to do a tier video. I have done these on my Patreon before, but I have not done them on my main channel. I thought it'd be really fun to just go through and talk about horror remakes because there's a lot of chatter about this. There has been for the last several years, especially now that The Crow has been announced to be remade, and I know a lot of people are not happy about that. I think there is a place for remakes, and I guess when we go through these, I'll talk about what I like and what I dislike about remakes. It is all in fun, so keep the comments nice and do go for it. Let me know what you think down below. I know you'll have lots of thoughts on my opinions. I guess my main objective of this video is not only to have fun, but to create conversation about remakes and have a look when they're laid out how many actually hit the mark. Because in my head, I can think of really good ones and really bad ones, but putting them on paper and actually sorting them into groups is really going to say it all. It's going to show the ratio of good versus bad. So let's get into it. I have picked 30 horror remakes, so I think that's a pretty generous number. I could not do every single remake, so if I am missing one that you want to talk about, please let me know your thoughts down below, but I could not pick every single one. I just went with an array, a collection, and let's start at Amityville. So this is the Ryan Reynolds, I'm going to call it the Ryan Reynolds remake. You know what? This is not very well received, I have to say, especially because the original is such a staple. Obviously, the Amityville franchise is pretty expansive now, and I do think for the franchise, this is one of the better films. I actually really like this remake. When you grew up, watching horror is usually what you're kind of attracted to or what you have a soft spot for. And because this is from 2005, when I was 15, this is just like the peak of me getting into horror movies. So I do have a soft spot personally for this movie. Do I think it's the best movie ever? Absolutely not. But for that reason, I am gonna have to I'll give it a B. Is that fair? I don't know. I can feel you screaming at me. Okay, this one does have, like, I think it's like a 5.9 currently on IMDb, so I don't think it's well received by a general audience, but for me, it's not the worst remake ever. I am a fan of the original, and obviously the original is much creepier. This one more relies on shocking moments and the portrayal of being possessed, like Ryan Reynolds being possessed, which is quite frightening, but it's not spooky like the original. As a remake, it kind of achieves its purpose because it is to be remade for that current generation, and it did well to get a lot of people into horror, believe it or not. So I'm gonna come at it from that angle for this one. Okay, Black Christmas. I went for the 2019 version. I know there's another version as well that a lot of people talk about, but I think that this one is a pretty heavy topic, and I have not spoken about it since I did my review on it. I am not a fan of this remake for reasons that aren't really attached to what a lot of the community said. I just didn't think it was a good story. It didn't flow very well. It was very choppy, and a lot of the good stuff didn't end up in the edit, I believe. But I do feel like it tried to bring the message, which is from the original, which was really political or social commentary, which people, I guess, kind of glide over. But I feel like it just completely missed the mark. I do know some people who like this movie, but as a remake, I don't think it really fit. I think this film should just have its own name. I just don't think it is our Black Christmas. I love how it says Merry Christmas on this poster too. So I'm gonna give this one a D. Don't be mad. Okay, another controversial pick. I really put myself through the ringer with this one. Blair Witch. I'm a huge Blair Witch fan. You cannot see, but behind the camera, I actually have sticks from this remake in my office. I have sticks. I have the symbol, you know what I mean? I have this. It could be the same one on my wall, which I got in LA. Adam Wingard, he has done some great stuff in horror. I would not say this is his best work, but as a huge fan of the original, Blair Witch is like up there with my top 10 horror movies of all time. I didn't hate it. I know a lot of people really hated it, and I promise you this is not the case going forth, because there's definitely some of these that I really hated that recreated some of my favorite movies. But this one I did not hate. Again, I don't feel like it served the purpose as a true remake. It kind of ties into the original a little bit, but because maybe it is like a requel or a reboot, but I do feel like because of the name and it's introducing it to a new generation, it was aiming for a remake, but I don't think that this one really achieved the whole idea of encompassing the original feeling. Obviously, there's a couple of purposes for remakes: to get butts in seats because they know the original, to recreate something for a new audience, to get them into that genre. I know everyone at home is screaming cash grab, but that's, that's what number one is. It's the well-known title that gets butts in seats at cinemas. But what I also really appreciate about remakes is their ability to take something and then kind of do a modern spin or do some kind of symbolism or metaphor and twist that in to the original story. And I felt like Blair Witch, the remake, it's not a bad movie by my standards. I know a lot of people probably don't like it. I felt like it didn't really achieve any of that. So I'm actually going to give it a C. Even though I don't hate it, I'm going to give it a C. Carrie, or Carrie, I never know which way to pronounce it. Obviously, huge fan of the original. Sissy Spacek, you cannot compare. Chloe's good. She's probably a little bit more conventionally good looking, which I don't really think fits the role. I did really love Julianne Moore as the mum. I just love her and everything. But it did feel like a weird recreation. Again, not a movie I think is bad, but just not one that really sticks out to you. Do you ever think about the remake? I never think about the remake. This one is from 2013, and I honestly have seen it once, and I'll never go back to it. It's okay, but it's forgettable to me. I'm being brutal, aren't I? I'm going to give this one a C as well. Dawn of the Dead is from 2004. This, to me, is a good remake. The original is a little bit cheesy, but it does stand for something. It's cheesy, it's a little bit dramatic, but it's a sign of the times, I guess, for that kind of, it feels like a little bit more soapy. But this remake, it really took its time to get all the details right, from the music, the casting. I love the opening and how they introduce you to the main character. I just think that it's done in a really alluring way, and it stamps the time of 2004 as well. So I think that they do serve different purposes. So I'm actually going to give this one a high score, even though I'm not a huge zombie lover. I think this is a really good remake. I'm gonna give it an A. Here we go. The next film, I believe personally, is one of the best horror remakes, because we're talking about Evil Dead. The Evil Dead original, great movie, amazing movie, but as I was saying before, serves a different purpose to this remake. And this remake does what I was talking about before really well. It takes the original concept but makes it its own and puts a spin on it. This time we're talking about addiction and the way it kind of plays out. It takes inspiration from the original, but it's a completely different story. And then, of course, we've got the blood. It is one of the most gory horror movies or bloody horror movies in existence. And that's a fact. And it's terrifying. It's a scary ass movie, and I stand by this. I think it's one of the best horror movie remakes. Come at me. This is why I don't share my opinions. Flatliners. This is one I forget about all the time. It is an interesting remake because it's also a sequel in a very strange way, but it really, it gives birth to a new cast going through the same thing. I find this one very forgettable. I'm going to be honest with you. I watched this one. I've probably reviewed it. I don't even know if I saw it in the cinema because that's how little I remember of it. The original is such a crazy and interesting kind of sci-fi concept. Seeing how close you can get to death. It's a well-grounded fear and horror, and I felt like this one is just forgettable. absolutely forgettable. So, this one is it's a C for me. Halloween. Rob Zombie's Halloween. I do not share my opinion on Halloween very often on this channel because I feel like it's kind of oversaturated. A lot of people talk about it and a lot of people are a lot closer to it than I am. So I just don't feel the need to kind of scream into the void, scream into a community that's already spoken about it. I have nothing to add to the conversation, but one thing I will say is I don't think that this is a bad movie. I feel like I know that this is the minority and a lot of fans probably hate that, but honestly, it does not change anything if I like this film and you don't. It does not change anything. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite movie. Of Rob Zombie films, I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of them, and I usually prefer like Lords of Salem, 31. I like the ones that aren't really the popular franchises. Like, I'm not a huge House of a Thousand Corpses fan, and Halloween definitely has those rough bits about Rob Zombie's films that I just don't really enjoy. But I do enjoy the perspective and a perspective shift, and as I said, it takes the original and it twists it. So for that, I don't think it's awful. I think people just really hate seeing Michael Myers recreated in ways that doesn't vibe with the original, and I can totally understand that. A lot of people hate this remake, but I think that there is passion put into it. There's thought put into it. It's a lot darker in a different way, more gritty, I guess, than the original. But as a remake, what do I think? I mean, it's really hard because it's not like I love this film, but I do understand the purpose of it. I mean, Halloween hasn't really been told that many different ways. I'm kind of going between a B and a C. I'm going to put it in a C because I do see its flaws, but I don't absolutely hate it. It's a very interesting kind of ladder we got going on here. House of Wax. Okay, this is a very interesting remake because it's done different. It's almost just inspired by the original, almost like House on Haunted Hill. You know, Shirley Jackson has like several hundred adaptations based from it. And House of Wax, I love the original, but it is nothing like this. It's, again, something that feels just inspired. The original with Vincent Price, it's just a different movie and has a completely different feel. I actually love this remake. Again, it's a product of my time. I'm born in the 90s, so this says a lot to me personally. And Paris Hilton is fucking amazing in this film. Absolutely amazing. Her kill's amazing. She's such a good sport for it. And I just think it's a fun 90s film. And if you see it as anything more than that, congratulations, but I don't. I just think of it as a fun slasher, really. I'm going to give this one I'm in between the A and the B. I'm going to give it an A. Fuck it. It. Okay, another film that a lot of people were mad about, the remake. I do suggest, this might come off as harsh, but rewatch the original miniseries. It is so slow and so different, and I absolutely love this remake. I can't lie. It took the original, it twisted it, it added so many interesting elements. It was darker, it's scary. The original is not very scary. I mean, Tim Curry is great, but when you watch that as an adult, it has a completely different effect on you. And I absolutely love this movie. I'm going to give it, is it S? I'm going to give it an S tier. Jacob's Ladder. Probably a lot of you don't know this exists because this one went way under the radar. I actually did a review on it back in the day when it first came out. It is a horrendous, horrendous remake. Totally does not make sense why it's a thing. There's strange drama in it. It takes what was a psychological kind of surrealist horror and really turns it into a drama that is confusing at times. If you have never seen this film, I recommend giving it a miss. That goes straight to D for me. Let Me In, a remake of Let the Right One In, which is a beautiful book as well. And this one is interesting. Chloe, again, at her finest, I think. It changes a lot of the core story for an American audience, and I guess we haven't really spoken about that. Yeah, we've been really lucky so far that we haven't had any remakes that have to be remade because some people don't like subtitles. But this one is kind of for that purpose. They know that it's going to reach a larger audience if it's in English. And I think they achieved that. I don't think it's a bad remake. I do think you get a lot more atmosphere out of the original, which is usually the case. If something has a spark and something special, a lot of people want to see that, grab it, and put butts in seats and remake it. And this one is one that's kind of different to everything else we've talked about so far because it's purely just made for a English-speaking audience. There isn't a lot of changes, just subtle ones that make it easier to comprehend. I don't think this one's bad at all. I'm gonna give this one a B. Maniac. This is a very interesting one because it's one that, again, feels more just inspired by. I'm a huge fan of Elijah Wood in horror movies. I think he's done amazing things for horror, and he's so interesting, the characters he picks, and I just love how they took the perspective that's in Maniac and they really made it into something else now, where the original was such a controversial film at the time and was made to shock the audience, and now they need to put a lot more into that too, because we're so desensitized to shock the audience, and I think that this film does that quite well. Love the POV perspective. I think it's dark, and again, Elijah Wood is a perfect fit for it. This is great because a lot of people would not even have watched Maniac, a film from the 80s, and this takes that original idea and puts its own spin on it, but also just like gives homage to it. It brings back something that a lot of people may have missed. That's one of my biggest gripes with the industry, is that we're not taking films that were original and had all of this potential and remaking them, because that's really what the audience wants to see. They want to see things hit. And there's so many films we watch and we're like, this was so close to being something. And I feel like, instead of The Crow, which does hit, we should take something like Maniac, which at the time, yeah, sure, served a purpose, but it was not a classic. And now they can change that and put a whole different meaning on it, bringing it into the current day. I like Maniac. I think it's a great remake. I'm going to give that one an A. Martyrs. Many of you may not know that there is an American remake of the French-Canadian film Martyrs. Martyrs is one of my top favorite horror movies of all time. So I did watch this. I did a video on it back in the day when I watched the remake. You know what? It's not bad remaking a film for an American audience. It's not the worst thing ever. Funny Games did a great job at that with Naomi Watts. Obviously that was shot by shot, but what happens with Martyrs is they change the reveal of the film. If you have not seen the original, I'm not going to spoil it, but the way the like reveal and the meaning and the message behind it is dropped on you is part of the terror. It's part of the terror, and they give that away at the start in this film. And so it kind of ruins the whole structure and vibe of the film. It's probably one of the worst remakes I've seen, to be honest. I was really shocked by it. Oh my gosh, I have thoughts about this. So I went with Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 instead of New Nightmare because that's a very confusing remake, requel. I don't even know what that is. Standalone film, I guess. I actually rewatched this last night because I think out of all of these films, that's the one I hadn't seen more recently. I watched it maybe when it first came out, probably when I was 10, and it is absolute trash. It's almost like when someone inputs all of, different conversations from different people into like an app or like a bot or like a Twitter account, and then that account is based on all of those people combined. This is what this film feels like. It feels like they've put every single cliche horror movie into a bot and it's just spat out their script. It's horrendous. Oh my gosh. Like, you know what? At least in Halloween, he didn't really speak. The one-liners that Freddy Krueger gives, or whatever this thing is, he's not Freddy, in this movie, it's horrendous. The storyline, I cannot believe that it went there with what they did to his character. I am so mad about it. It's awful. It's horrendous. It's awful. That is the worst. And it's not even like, oh yeah, it's fun because it's like 2000s, it's 2010, but it's not even fun because it's in that era. It's just lunacy. It really is. Okay, this is a little bit hard because Pet Sematary is one of my favorite movies ever. I've got my original copy of the book right here. I love the book. I love the original movie. A lot of people will find the original movie a little bit cheesy. I have problems with this movie because, again, it kind of does what the Martyrs one does, where it takes a cool aspect of it and tries to flip it. This is a little bit different, actually. It takes one of the core aspects, and the remake, the whole idea of the remake is it's meant to pay off because you've seen the original. They flip an aspect in it, and as a standalone film, it's very strange that they do that, because if you hadn't seen the original, you're not really sure that there's anything different. If you're reading between the lines, yeah, you get what I mean. They flipped something. I don't know why. Just because. And there was a lot I didn't like. I really did not like the ending scene. It just did not have the same feeling, but it's hard for me because obviously I'm very attached to the source materials. So I'm obviously going to be I'm going to be a hard judge in this one. But this is my personal, I know a lot of people would put it higher. I don't think a standalone movie, it's the worst movie I've ever seen by far, but it's not one of my favorites. I'm going to give it a C. This is why I have my own channel, so I can do my own stuff. Okay, Poltergeist. I saw this one in the cinema and I've never been so disappointed. This is 2015, Sam Rockwell, who I love, and I was so excited that he was gonna be in a horror movie in the cinema. I was just stoked, you know? And yeah, this does nothing, absolutely nothing for me. The original is so whimsical and scary and full of like this beautiful mix of like practical effects and CGI, and it just marries so well for the time. I love the original Poltergeist, and this one, it does not do anything for me. This is a bad one. Sorry, I'm putting it right next to Freddy, but it is pretty bad. Quarantine. This is another one that is done for an American audience. Quarantine is a remake of Wreck. Amazing zombie movie done in an apartment building. This one is basically a shot-by-shot, correct me if I'm wrong, but a shot-by-shot remake. And it serves its purpose. It's just for a wider audience. Hopefully it got a lot of people to watch the original. The original just has that, 10% better atmosphere. But I don't think that this is a poor decision at all. Well casted as well. I think this is a really good one, to be honest. I'm going to give it an A. Rabid. Okay, the original, very strange movie. The way it's set up and the different locations in it, very strange. This remake had some really disgusting moments, which I think this movie is about gore. But I kind of wish this one, again, kind of like Black Christmas, was separated from the original, because as a standalone film, I think it does a lot better. But when it's compared to the original, that's when it kind of falls apart. And it's just more inspired by that so much it should just have its own title. So I was, a little bit disappointed by that, but not the worst one. I'm gonna give it a C. Shudder. Okay, again, another one that is remade for an American audience. This is a remake of a Thai horror movie. The original, if you haven't seen the original, I recommend watching it because it does have, again, a different feel, far more creepy and more scary, and it kind of just has a different meaning to the film because of it. And it just hits really hard. But I do think, again, this one did well at bringing that story to an American audience and hopefully opening up people's eyes. I'm not sure about like the cash grab of like, cashing into that culture, but I do think that this is a good remake. I do think it is great. And I think that hopefully, it opened up people's eyes to look around to see more original horror movies. I think this one's great. I'm going to give it an A. Suspiria. This is the definition of taking a horror movie and changing it completely. Argento, Giallo, magic. The original is so colorful and so beautiful, and I can hear the Goblin soundtrack in my head as I'm talking about it. This remake is so different. It really does take that and twist it upside down, puts several metaphors about the time and placement. They also kept it in Berlin during the war, which is really interesting. They did not try and move it into a modern setting. They changed the story, brought in new characters, and really flipped it on its head. It became more of a muted product where it's not as this colorful, Giallo, but it's not this bright kind of theatrical movie. it's a very slow and sad and drawn out, whimsical experience. I am not a personal fan of the red scene in this one. You know, like the peak of the movie. It's not for me, but I think the rest of the movie is absolutely fantastic and again, stands on its own, but I can appreciate why this one is a remake, because it does take some of the stuff that is very beautiful, like the meaning of the original, and it does not try and change all of those details. It keeps true to the original story, so it's not quite inspired by, but it definitely adds several hundred layers to the story. So I'm gonna give this one I'm gonna give it an S. Believe it or not, I'm not the biggest fan of like the peak and parts of the film, but I do think it's a great remake. Chainsaw Massacre. So obviously there was a lot of different chainsaws I could go with. Or really this one and then the one that just came out. But I've already spoken about, I've spoken about both of these, but I've already spoken about the one that just came out in its own video. Chainsaw Massacre, I love this remake from the 2000s. I think that it is gritty, it pays homage to the original, and it does that thing where it's getting all the teens into horror movies, and it definitely worked for me. I maybe even saw this before I saw the original as a teen, and yeah, the original is by far the better film, but this one does something very special and also gives the booty shot. So it's very much like a homage. I really enjoy this one. I know that a lot of people probably don't feel the same way because it doesn't have the exact same vibe. It's very stereotypical of its decade, where obviously the original is 3 or 4 decades earlier, so they feel very different. I'm gonna give this one an A. They also don't try and bring all of the characters, and it's not the exact same, but yeah, I really enjoy it. The Fly. Again, another Vincent Price original. Jeff Goldblum, who's, this is one of his like most famous films to me, as like a horror fan and probably anyone who likes sci-fi. I know a lot of people think of Jurassic Park, but I always think about The Fly. He's just gruesome and gross, and this was perfect. This was the perfect idea to remake this when they did, because it was when everyone was really into practical effects. So I think it worked really well in that decade and that time. And maybe that's something we should look at now. What is, kind of trending, or what's really working for our time, like zombie films, because obviously everyone's into that kind of idea with what's going on in the world, but practical effects worked really well with bringing The Fly back, and so I think that this is top tier. I think we got another top tier. Hey, we're not doing too bad. It's actually, oh my gosh, it's actually completely, oh no, here, nearly balanced. Okay, The Grudge. I honestly want to forget this movie. I want to forgive you, and I want to forget you. The Grudge, this is forgettable. Absolutely horrendous, absolutely forgettable. It kind of reminds me of Rings in a way, but this one made no sense. Absolutely no sense. There was strange moments in it. I have no words. I have no words for this one. All I remember is it not making much sense at all and wondering what was left out of the edit. So I'm going to give that one a D. The Hills Have Eyes, another great remake of like a 70s classic brought into a current age. Again, practical effects on this, loved it. It is such a creepy movie, so scary, and you know what? I actually put this one on an even playing field with the original. I feel like this one is, because of the time, they had bigger budget, or just it was more believable. The original's a little bit more dramatic. Or maybe like melodramatic, where this one, I can feel the fear just thinking about it, especially, that scene in the camper van. Absolutely terrifying. I think this is pretty close to top tier, if not top tier. One of my favorite horror movies of all time is a remake, and it's called The Ring. Naomi Watts kills the remakes. Can we talk about that? Obviously, we talked about before, Funny Games. But this remake, again, made for an American audience, or made for an English-speaking audience. It does the trick, and I feel like they brought the setting into the perfect location, being Seattle. There's not a scene in this movie that I do not like. Everything about it, I love. What else can I say about this? I know it is just a recreation of the original. I do like this one better, and I know the atmosphere is very different in the Japanese original, but there's just something, maybe it's just Naomi Watts. I feel like I sink deeper into her character, Rachel. She's one of my favorite protagonists in any horror movie, or any movie, in fact. I just think she's flawed. I've said this a billion times, but I just think she's flawed and complicated and realistic. And I feel like I can sink more into her in this movie than I can in Ringu, the original. And for me, this is top tier. Absolutely. The Thing. You know what? This is everyone's favorite version. The thing with The Thing is the fact, what we were talking about with The Fly, it's remade. This is John Carpenter's thing, obviously. It's just the perfect time to play around with this kind of aspect and to have fun with it and to really blow the socks off the audience and really surprise the viewer. And they could do that. They could experiment. The Thing is the perfect movie to experiment because it's really like an alien being. So they can do whatever they want to portray that. And I felt like they did that really well in this. It's just so different and so unique and unexpected. This is top tier for sure. Everyone loves The Thing. I had to throw in another 90s for us all. 13 Ghosts. This for me lands with House of Wax, but I have to say, and I know a lot of people probably my age or in my bracket might enjoy this one as well. I watched it maybe last year or the year before, and it did not live up to the hype I had as a teenager. So I am going to put it in B, which is really unfortunate. But I do think it is on par with the original. I don't think the original is that great either. But I think it did well. Again, great product of its time. Bringing in an aspect where you can play around with so many different looks of ghosts. Obviously worked well when everyone was getting to CGI horror, and this is definitely when this happened, and to play with those ghostly effects in that time looks beautiful. Now when you go back and watch it, not so great. Not so great. The Wicker Man. Bees. Nicolas Cage, love him with all my heart. This I don't even have to say anything else, do I? It did not work out. It does not have the same feeling as the original, which is eerie and strange, culty. This one is just aloof. It's aloof, like Nicolas Cage, but obviously the world was not ready for him here. And the last one I have today is a remake from last year. It's Wrong Turn. This, I feel like, is kind of like Blair Witch, where it lands in this interesting, I mean, I did not like the film, but it lands in this interesting space where it takes the original idea and kind of tries to put a spin on it and tries to add in different aspects. Maybe I'm thinking it's kind of like Blair Witch because it's in the forest. But for me, it completely changed the idea of the original, because the original is about taking the wrong turn and a bunch of like hooligans coming after you. And for this film, they definitely add another layer into that, a like more social commentary layer that doesn't actually make much sense. But I mean, that's my problems with the film itself. With the remake of it, and thinking about it from that kind of perspective, I felt let down on the fact, again, it was completely changed and probably shouldn't even be called Wrong Turn, because it's not the same idea as what the original is. If this movie was not titled Wrong Turn, no one would even compare it to the original franchise at all. It's not like it at all. And I just really dislike the movie, as I've already said, so I'm just gonna give it a 2. Harsh, but true. So there you are, friends. That is my tier list. Look, it's quite balanced. Believe it or not, obviously it's what films I chose, but there is 30 films here. And for me, it's quite balanced where they land. Let me know what you think, and I'll actually leave this link below so you can do your own tier list from these same films. If you want to share the link or share it with your friends, or if you make videos yourself, feel free to do one. Thank you so much for joining me. I know I'm going to have a lot of comments, so I'm excited and a little bit fearful to see what you say. Again, this is all in good fun, and we're talking more about my personal taste, and I try to obviously break down the films on how well they achieved the remake. Let me know what remakes you love as well. If I've missed any on this list, let me know down below. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you very soon. If you like videos that are a little bit more controversial and different, please give this video a thumbs up, and I'll talk to you very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye, friends.